Hello, this is Lori Schmidt, Wolf Curator for the International Wolf Center. Welcome to this Wednesday night April birthday webinar here. So we have a little bit of video that we're going to share right now. The timing of wolf activity is back to what we consider to be kind of that crepuscular pattern of activity where they're active at dawn and dusk. So right now the exhibit pack is sleeping, and we will join them a little bit later. Hopefully they'll get up. This is one of our first sunny days that we've had in a very, very, very long time. It's been a long spring, and we are seeing the effects of wolves getting a little bit of that warmth and that sun into their patterns of sleeping. So Abby Keller, the lead wolf specialist here, is going to be managing the chat box for me, and she will be able to answer any questions. And then if there's things that she can't answer through direct response, or we want the entire group to hear, she will then chime in and ask as an audio question, and we'll try to address it at that time. So like I said, I'm going to start with a little bit of video of our past April birthdays, and then we will talk a little bit about future potential April birthdays, and then from there go on to a live view and be able to answer any questions that you may have. So as you may have heard, we started the Wolf Center Ambassador Wolf program in 1989 with a litter of 4 wolves. And I know some of you have probably seen this already, and so it's probably a little bit of a repeat, this photo. It was Jedediah, Basha, Balazar, and Raisa. And this is Raisa pup. And apologize in whatever, when I produced this, a little bit of the dissolve didn't work all that well for me. But Raisa was a pup that came down with canine coronavirus, which is a virus, a viral infection. Obviously, COVID-19 was not the first time that the coronavirus reared its ugly head. It just happened to be this strain of the virus for us as humans. But canids do have a coronavirus that was problematic. And with Raisa, she probably, I think her, again, it was back in 1989, so it was a while ago, but I'm pretty sure it was probably around 14 or 15 days that she contracted the virus and needed to be stomach tubed for several days, was very dehydrated, same with parvovirus. It's usually the dehydration, the issues that happen that create the problem, including secondary infections, more than the virus itself. And as we know from a virus, it was challenging to fight. Vaccination is the best course of action, which is why you will see oftentimes canid vaccines do deal with the coronavirus. So one thing that I did do a couple of years ago for the center is we started to develop this yearbook, this rendezvous yearbook for any member or donor, $75 or higher, that would get this booklet of current wolf activity, behavior, images, that type of thing. And there's a feature that we have in the back of the rendezvous that picks one word for all of our, what we call our gone but not forgotten wolves. Those are wolves that have left our care, for medical reasons, or grizzled with old age issues that have passed away. But in this case, and with all of the past wolves, we pick one word that helps us kind of best express what we felt about that particular wolf, circumstance, behavior, that type of thing. And for Raisa, hers was resilience. And not only did she have a significant hair loss from that issue with canine coronavirus, but she also then left our facility. She was extremely dominant with her sister, Basha. And so those two were vying for dominant status. And as would occur in the wild, when you have 2 females that might be vying for a spot of dominance, one of them might pick up and disperse. Well, in our environment, in a captive born environment, dispersal is not an option. Naturally for the wolf, they can't just say, I don't want to live here anymore. Well, they could, I guess, escape, but we haven't had that issue. But so it's our job as managers to make that decision, to move a wolf out. And so Raisa was the wolf that was more outgoing, needed us socially less than Basha. Basha was very needy. Basha was very, very bonded to the staff. Raisa was very independent. So we felt in that case, it might be best if Raisa went to a facility and become a dominant female at another facility, and Basha stayed and became the dominant female at our facility. And so in 1989, in the fall of 89, Raisa went to Brown County Reforestation Camp in Green Bay, Wisconsin. She joined another female who needed a home, and they joined an older male wolf, and they became a facility or a pack there. So the other thing about the 1989 litter you may not be familiar with is they were featured in a Bev Doolittle video and were the inspiration for the Sacred Circle painting that you might have seen. Bev Doolittle, again from Joshua Tree, California, had this a painting of kind of the circle of life, and wolves were part of it. And this was the 90 exhibit. In this case, they are now yearlings, and this is Jedediah, Basha, and Balazar, the three wolves. And I think I wanted to clip this piece just to remind us how far we've come from this exhibit. We used to have the public right next to the fence. The wolves were literally 4 feet away. We had no secondary fences. We had staff there 24 hours a day, making sure that people would not infringe on the wolves for safety reasons. So it was a very small, very intensive exhibit. I lived actually in a tent right next to the exhibit. Did my work. I had really goofy hair back then. Definitely my hair straightened out in the years. But this is Basha in a subordinate posture and very, very needy to the staff. She was very important. It was important to her that she had her people that she trusted. Jedediah, on the other hand, was one of the other males. Jedediah's word of choice was comfort. And Jedediah loved to be comfortable, and didn't matter where he was, he would find a way to be comfortable. This is Jedediah at my house. So basically when in 1989, again, April, they were born, they stayed at my house. They didn't really come here until Memorial Day weekend. And then in the winter, they'd come back to my house, and I had a large enclosure for them because we were a seasonal here at the International Wolf Center. The building wasn't even heated. It was a seasonal building, meaning it was a summer 3-season building. And obviously, as things developed, we would bring them back in the spring or Memorial Day, and they would spend the summer at the center. So that's kind of how we were from 89, 90, 91 exhibit. And then in 92, the building was completed or was built for the new Wolves and Humans exhibit. And that created kind of that scenario. So Basha, most memorable for the facial masking. And now we have Rika, who has much more striking facial masking than Basha ever did. And I thought Basha was very expressive in the way the white kind of highlights around her face. Rika has a heart-shaped look of white masking around her face. But that was the word that we chose for Basha, was that incredible masking. And like I said, she was a very bonded wolf to the human component, very dominant in the absence of Raisa, took on that role as a dominant female. And then, in my career, there's always that one wolf who just is so social, and they are social carnivores. This is Balazar, and Balazar was just as social as it could be. But what was interesting about Balazar, it was that it was only with 3 or 4 people, meaning that he socialized extremely well, but not a broad socialization, meaning that he didn't trust a lot of people, but the people he trusted were his world. And that included Maggie, my dog. That's my dog, Maggie, German Shepherd there. And she was used as an instrumental part to help socialize the wolves. Plus, because I had a dog, I wanted to make sure that she was part of it. And the word we chose for Balazar was traveler. Balazar was in July of 1991, was sent to Idaho to star in a film with Jim Dutcher called Wolf Return of a Legend. And that is actually still on YouTube. If you search it, you can find it on YouTube. It was an ABC documentary. And why we chose to send Balazar is because we knew that the center had gotten the funding to be able to have the permanent exhibit. We knew that the more the wolves went to my house, the more fear avoidant they were coming back. So we knew that the center was going to start the permanent exhibit. That means the year-round wolves that were going to stay on site permanently were going to be from a new litter. And so it was my responsibility for those particular wolves to try to find options for them. And so Balazar was best known for his traveling. We flew out of Ely Airport at 1 a.m, flew over the Rockies with a non-pressurized plane, landed in Great Falls, picked up another wolf and brought him to Idaho, got him situated. And then Balazar proceeded to be part of this film where he actually adopted a litter of 4 pups, and about the same age as when we do the pup adoption with non-related wolves. So you like that size where they're a little bit bigger, where they can kind of handle things. So Balazar went from being here in Minnesota to being in the Rocky Mountains. Actually, this is Stanley, Idaho, with a sawtooth pack, and did quite well. And I was fortunate at the time because we didn't have wolves on site in 1992 to spend a little bit of time out there. He make sure he got situated. He really bonded with one of the sound crew members who's a friend of mine. And so I knew Balazar was going to be okay, and eventually ended up with friends of mine in Colorado to live out the rest of his life. Then in 1983, another April whelping, April 28th, 1993, that's when the center's permanent residents, Mackenzie, Black Color Phase, Kiana, Lakota, and Lucas were born, and they became an even age structure management. And they got the new facility that you have now versus the smaller facility. It has doubled fences, and raising 4 individual wolves as yearlings was a little bit challenging. So in the early days, again, 4 juveniles like to test. Wolves always like to test. That's a classic wolf, meaning every time a handler comes in, they're going to be tested. And that testing involves greetings, jumping, trying to jump up on your face. And so those of you who watch Rika and have watched Rika develop from the time that she was a pup coming into the pack and how she interacts with handlers, she's really quite well adapted. And while we have a little bit of jumping, we certainly don't have this. This was just testing beyond belief. And then once a test is done, they kind of go about their business. But they look for vulnerabilities. That's what wolves are. They're social carnivores, but they're opportunistic carnivores. So even with the staff that handle them, I think it's really important that people understand that the work that we do here, the social bonding that we do with the wolves, is to be able to gain their trust so that we can care for them and do medical work for them. But by no means does it make them a dog. By no means does it take away the nature of wolves, which is testing and looking for weakness. And that includes for the social handlers. So a lot of people say, oh, they love you, they would never hurt you. No, they socially bonded with us, but they're going to look for weaknesses, including within their own pack structure. We know that wolf dominance, wolves, attack with wolves in the wild does occur, whether it be changing status or whether it be a wolf testing to increase in rank, or whether it be competitive between packs. But we know wolf on wolf conflict is part of wolf life. And so we don't take it for granted. We certainly don't think that they're dogs. We respect them as wolves. And we certainly have had some great experiences with that social bonding. But like I said, we also know that even within family units, that bonding can lead to testing, can lead to deposing, can lead to complete elimination from the pack. And so we know that those things do happen. So the 1993 litter, again, born April of 1983, Mackenzie earned the name Maternal. And with Mackenzie, this was the first time that we at the center had actually brought in a non-related pack member to be introduced. Now, obviously, you watched the video. I was able to do that with Balazar in Idaho, but this is the first time that the center did it. So I took that experience that I learned in Idaho and what worked and what didn't work, and brought it back here in the year 2000. And that's when Shadow and Bleak joined Mackenzie and Lucas. By that time, Kiana had already passed. And so with Mackenzie, we chose the word maternal because, she was a spayed female. She never had a litter on her own, yet you would never have noticed, given how much she introduced, or she accepted Shadow Malik, and really demonstrated that a wolf is a wolf is a wolf, meaning that Mackenzie was a Great Plains subspecies. Shadow Malik were Arctic subspecies, and they all spoke the same wolf language. It's not about the subspecies of wolves in North America is not about how they act. It's about where they live. What are the adaptations that make them successful in the Arctic versus the adaptations that makes a Mexican wolf successful living in the Mexican desert versus the Great Plains wolf versus the Rocky Mountain wolf versus the Eastern wolf. What are those challenges in their environment that provided the natural world to select for that physical trait, that that look, that posture, that size of ears or legs or whatever that makes them a wolf, but it doesn't change the way that they behave. And so Mackenzie, just a beautiful wolf who gracefully aged into that kind of light coloration. So I referenced that Kiana had passed at a young age. Kiana earned the name, the one word of classic. Kiana, a lot like Bolts later on, but Kiana had that classic wolf stare. Kiana really, from the standpoint of socialization, while they were raised the same, Kiana really bonded with Mackenzie, was second in command to Mackenzie, and that was her strongest bond. Those two were amazing. She just kept reinforcing Mackenzie and did all she could to keep Lakota, the third ranking female in line, but always deferred to Mackenzie. So didn't have as much trust with us as humans. And certainly you can see that in their eyes. And she did have a significant, she had a mortality where she passed away, just curled up, walked up the hill, kind of made a circle like she was going to bed down, collapsed and died. And it appeared from the necropsy that she had an enlarged heart. And so hers was probably heart failure or some metabolic disorder at the age of 6. So a very young age that she declined. But I think anyone who knew Kiana knew that, that face, that stare, that again was later rivaled by Bolts, who had a similar kind of look to him. So that was what I thought was kind of interesting about Kiana. And with Lakota, it wasn't the look, it was the behavior. So Lakota was the third female in that April of 1993 litter. And with Lakota, I used the word chases. And Lakota was the Omega. And the Omega is the one who gets chased, who gets grabbed. This is Lakota getting grabbed by Mackenzie, the dominant female. That's Lucas, the male. Omegas get chased. And I remember once one of the biologists, friends of mine, who said, the reality is the Omegas are an important part of the pack. It's like a pail. Without a bottom, it would not be a pail. And in a wolf world, without the Omega, it would not be a pack. And so the idea that the Omega is the bottom, and they call it the scapegoat, but the reality is chases are part of that social dynamics. This is actually Lakota in the back, and Lakota had the black cowlick in the middle of her face. This is Lucas, who had kind of 3 lines in the middle of his muzzle. Is how people could tell them apart. And this is Lakota chasing the dominant male, Lucas, and he's the only male, so he's dominant by default. But that was what Lakota did. Whether she was being chased with the Omega or whether she was chasing someone else or part of that social relationship, and that was in retirement as well. But when in May of 2008, Mackenzie died and left Lakota as the last remaining 1993 litter mate. She was in retirement by herself. We were raising, bottle feeding Denali and Aiden in May of 2008. So we were here 24 hours a day. We said, you know what, let's just let Mackenzie, let Lakota just come and go. So she would come out of the lab, she would steal things, and we would chase her back to the lab or chase her back to retirement and retrieve whatever she stole. She has an entire list of laminated larceny items. It was mouse pads, it was wallets, it was a block of cheese, it was a puppy toy, it was a brat, it was whatever happened to be in her reach. We let her in the lab. She'd stare at our computers and wonder what we were up to, always with someone supervising. We didn't obviously leave her in the lab alone, but the best part about Lakota's memory is in those last few months when she had that freedom to come and go out of the enclosure into the lab is she loved the game of chase. And so that was the word that we chose for Lakota. And then when she declined, she was the last of the 1993 litter to decline. So I kind of don't have them in order of mortality. I more or less just have them in memory. But the other thing about Lucas I chose for him was this sea green eyes. Lucas was probably the most kind of dynamic in that he didn't really have the amber eyes. His eyes were a little bit more greenish, and he also loved to carry deer heads around. So Rika he would have a lot to chat about. That was Lucas's MO. He would carry a deer head, he would drop it in front of another wolf, and they would growl at that other wolf for trying to go after his deer head when he was the one who dropped it in front of them. Usually with the juvenile Arctic wolves, Shadow Malik, kind of looking in disbelief because they didn't even engage in the activity. Lucas controlled it all himself. So bringing a deer head over, drop it in front of somebody, and then growling at them for even looking at his deer head. So that's a Lucas memory. But I think if you happen to follow National Geographic, you might be surprised that you see Lucas's face on National Geographic's website. Also on many publications, National Geographic for Kids, this is Lucas. And National Geographic was here, did some photography, and I don't have it handy. I meant to find it for this webinar, but there was a famous photo that Geographic took inside our enclosure of an incredible lip curl. And I think it was Lucas or Lakota in that photograph, but we actually had the Geographic folks come in and photograph while we were feeding a carcass. And that's another real famous photo. So oftentimes those of us who work in captive wolf management will see a photo and say, I know that individual, or I recognize that individual. It's very challenging to take photos of wolves in the wild, unless you're in Yellowstone with a very long lens or, through a spotting scope. But we have many, many beautiful shots that were acquired in a controlled or human-centered environment. So I thought that was kind of interesting to share. And yeah, his eyes were pretty unique. There's no doubt that sea green eye coloration was something that I thought was important. And somebody had asked, do you ever see that on wolves in the wild? And actually there was a wolf, a wild wolf that was collared over by Mud Creek, about maybe 8 miles out of Ely. He had blue eyes, and this was a wild wolf that we caught. So not see it very often in wild populations, and I don't know a lot of biologists who's ever recorded it, but certainly this was one memorable, for me, a memorable photograph of a wild wolf that was like, yeah, I've seen that look before. It was pretty cool. So that again is the 1993 litter born in April. And then as we go forward, the other April whelping that we had was April 27th, 2008. And you may recognize this bat ears. That's Denali upside down with Aiden kind of looking away. So that was April 27th, 2008. And that's kind of the day that we're honoring here today. So you are seeing would have been 14 years ago. And hard to believe that both of these two have passed on, because we have had obviously wolves that have lived to be 14. Neither one of them did. And so Aiden, I'll introduce first. His selection for his word was welcoming. Aiden was the pack leader. He took over from Shadow. We retired Shadow out in 2010. By 2011, Aiden took over pack leadership. And then in 2012, Aiden welcomed Luna and Bolts. But probably the most memorable Aiden welcoming was probably Grayson in 2016, Grayson and Axel, especially because Grayson and Axel had a little bit more challenges. Bolts and Luna, very comfortable coming into the exhibit. They were born in March. So they were much older. When they came in, they were half the size of Aiden and Denali, which was a formidable size to be, because those were Northwestern subspecies. They were quite large, but they were comfortable. They loved it. They really had no fear, inhibition coming into the exhibit. And Aiden obviously did a great job of welcoming them. But it was Grayson and Axel, who really I saw really benefited from Aiden's welcoming personality. And this is Axel. But look at Grayson here. You can see that tuck tail. Grayson had so much anxiety coming into this exhibit, and Aiden was so welcoming. And the bond that was created between Grayson and Aiden was instrumental in him Grayson getting over the introduction and becoming the pack member that he is today. And what's interesting is Aiden recognizes um, Grayson's anxiety, but he also recognizes Axel's annoying, kind of obnoxious, excitable behavior, and a completely different reaction to Axel than to Grayson. So they know, when wolf puppies need to be disciplined and when they need to be coddled or welcomed. So I think that was really the best word for Aiden, was that welcoming, because I think that's what we all remember so well. And then we had Denali, and originally when Denali came into the exhibit, we nicknamed them Red Paw because it was tough to tell them apart. They were adopted at 12 days of age. They were just little fur, fluff balls. This is Denali on the right. This is Aiden on the left. So to tell them apart, to make sure staff, especially staff that are up all night bottle feeding, that we know which wolf ate what in the middle of the night, we painted his toenails red and called him Red Paw before we opened it up or named the pup contest and named him. But later on, obviously, it was easy to tell those two apart. Denali on the right always had this more kind of golden coloration, bigger than Aiden. Aiden always had the weepy eyes. And when I go back and look at footage of the pack leaders, and I really start to see some kind of, again, correlation doesn't mean causation, but Aiden had weepy eyes, Grayson had weepy eyes, Shadow had weepy eyes. You really wonder if there isn't something to the immune system of those wolves who eventually become dominant and pack leaders that makes them more cognitive of the environment and more reactive to the stress in the environment. It's hard to say, but Denali, we know, never really had a care in the world. He was always subordinate to Aiden, never really tried for any status. Again, looking at the difference in how Aiden and Denali are kind of greeting. Aiden's ears are flat back. Denali's ears are kind of pricked a little bit, airplane, a little bit off to the side, but clearly more confident, whereas Aiden's a little bit more intimidated. But you can just see the nature of our introductions, how these pups really want to be with the adult wolves, with the exception of what Rika kind of went through. And I think a lot of that was because she was a singleton. But this is also the pack holding area. Again, just every time I look at footage, I think, boy, we've come a long way in making changes to this exhibit. Right now, this is the pack holding area that has has a pup fence that has a wood fence all along to protect it. It has a wood fence to protect it from snow, but also to protect it from the other wolves if they needed a little bit of privacy. This is where Grizzer would meet the exhibit pack as well, is right at this gate. So the facility serves its purpose with different, whether it be young or old, with different kind of designs to be able to help. But I really enjoy watching this excitement of these pups prior to the introduction. And they certainly do really want, and this is Grizzer and Maya, there, Shadow Malik were there as well, but they were more interested. Shadow's laying on the left-hand side, doing a lot of what Grayson does, which is lay down outside of the pup pen and watch the pups. That's a real Grayson move. He did it with Rika, for most of Rika's puphood before she went in. And now, if Rika seeks refuge in the medical pen on a stormy, rainy, lousy day, Grayson just lays right outside the medical pen waiting in miserable, cold, wet conditions, waiting for her. So there's a lot to be said about what Shadow used to do with pups, as well as what Grayson is doing now. So Denali, again, we look at that face, and certainly we know, we miss that face. I mean, there's many times where Rika does something or Axel does something. that says, that's a Denali move. We wonder if Denali's channeling himself through Rika, like when she pulls, when she tries to walk through your legs, and she's short enough now that she can fit, where Denali would try to do that. And, especially for the shorter staff, they'd, have to lift their leg up to be able to get him underneath her leg. But, I think gregarious was the word that I chose for Denali. I just think he was fun loving. He was social. He wanted to always be part of things. And he always was. I mean, there's no doubt for Denali. He was bonded with his brother, but he certainly was a part of every member of the pack. He had a face that we often wondered what he was thinking or what he was up to. Certainly, facial expressions are something that we know about wolves are pretty unique. I think, if you've not really kind of been following the patterns that I've been talking about with Rika over YouTube, the fact that they have dark coloration around their lips is going to highlight that lip curl that Denali just showed. Coloration around their eyes is going to magnify or make those eye contact and those eye communications a little bit more expressive. Certainly, black on the tips of the ears makes you, as your ears prick forward in interest, in focus, you can see them a little bit better. The white design on the inside of the ears, again, that contrast makes it all the much more visible. So coloration on a wolf is about communication, whether it be on the back of their neck where you see hackles. It is all about communication, and communication starts very young. And this is Aiden and Denali with Bolts, and at the time it was Bolts and Peanut. That's Luna's nickname. So you can see that ride up. You can see tail postures. You can certainly see dominance. And this is a circumstance. They were different ages. Bolts was born March 17th. Luna was born March 25th. And this is one of the reasons why a lot of people ask, would you get, two different pups again from different litters? I really just think there's so much development and so much change that goes on with wolf pups, that even just a week difference, you see the difference here between them. We had that same thing with Nisa and Grizzer and Maya being a week apart, and Luna and Bolts, again, from the 17th to the 25th. It doesn't seem like it's a lot of time, but it's enough time that behaviorally they are at different stages. And it was a challenge, I think, for the pup development. Not a challenge when they became older, but certainly a challenge for the pup development. The other thing I wanted to share, and I'm not condoning eating gloves, but I just want to, for those of you who have been watching on explore.org and know that Rika has been a little fixated on gloves, she's not the only wolf who's become fixated on gloves. So we obviously don't want them to have that, because that could be an intestinal blockage and be a concern. But the classic way that we get a glove back is a distraction at the gate. In this case, Luna actually brought the glove with. That's usually not how a distraction works, that you let the glove go so one of us can get it, and then you get the distraction. But basically, again, just reinforcing that what you might see from Rika, I do see a lot of comments on Explorer about her being, kind of a little bit, I don't know, some of the phrases I've heard, that she might be a little bit challenging or testing or up to no good, or I don't know. I don't think I heard that phrase, but grabbing gloves, stealing gloves, doing that kind of thing. Every wolf pup does it. I mean, they're curious. Curiosity is investigation is one of the main wolf behaviors. But I think what's important for me to recognize, and I've heard this before from people, is like, oh, how do you make them social if they're not related? Well, I don't make them social. And they are social. And a lot of people say, oh, because they're in a pen, they're just like dogs. Well, you know what? Dogs are just like wolves. The reality is wolves are the original social carnivore. They are the original social pack animal. And our domestication of dogs from wolves allows our dogs to be our best friend. And I think, to me, what was really remarkable for me and Denali was that he was better bonded. He had a stronger bond with Bolts than he did with his own litter mate. Denali and Bolts just had something special. They were 4 years apart. Bolts was introduced with Luna, and maybe because Luna became instantly the dominant female by being the only female, but Bolts really looked up to Denali and really warranted that social, gregarious pack member personality that Denali had. Now you can see Aiden coming over. Denali's head instantly drops, recognizing that his brother is higher ranking. Whether Aiden, saw Bulls paying homage to Denali and might have indicated that, maybe he was being a little bit too dominant. It's hard to say what Wolves think. But I can watch the body postures and say, Aiden picked something up on there, and all he had to do was his presence to approach Denali, and that resulted in Denali dropping his head, showing that respect for Aiden's posture or Aiden's position. So this clip here that I'm going to end with, this was the last day of Denali's life. Earlier that day, he was on the den. This was September 4th. He was active. He was moving around. And that night, a mass on his liver ruptured and he bled out. And so we know that life is short, and we know that anything can happen at any time. And we're just really, again, honored to know the individuals that we've known. And this is probably one of my favorite sound like my mother. This is one of my favorite Denali photos that I'm not sure that a lot of people have seen. When I try to put together webinars, because I've been doing this so long, I try not to use the same footage over and over again. So it's just a repeat, just a different day. And I don't know that a lot of people have seen this, but it is just that striking, inquisitive. When I look at wolf behavior, and I think the 5 categories of behaviors we use is investigatory, the social behavior, the predatory behavior, of basically of wolves, all wrapped up into this face. This is an animal who its brain, the natural world designed this animal to be who it is. Working with it in a socialized captive wolf situation does not change that brain by any means. They are not dogs. They do not react the same way of dogs. And I think that's the main message that we always want to try to drive home to people. So with that said, that's kind of the clips that I had put together. Those are our April birthdays. Everybody else is a May birthday. And so we do have a webinar. Actually, I'm turning around and doing a webinar on May 2nd, which is next Monday night, for Axel and Grayson. Their birthday is May 2nd. Rika will have her birthday webinar May 23rd, I think, if I have this right. And then in between there would have been Grizzers. Actually, no, I don't think we're going to do a Rika. I think we just do one birthday webinar. I think next year I do a Rika, but one birthday webinar on May 2nd that'll encompass all 3 generations, meaning Grizzer, who was Great Plains, who was born in 2004, the Arctic wolves, Axel and Grayson, born in 2016, and the Northwestern subspecies, Rika, born in 2021. So that'll be on Monday, May 2nd. So right now, what we're witnessing is the exhibit pack, and we are still in winter, spring. And basically the wolves are not up, which is, like I say, that pattern of crepuscular behavior. So I thought maybe what we could do is take any questions that maybe Abby had, and if there are any, and I could answer them. If not, then I can release Abby to maybe go do a quick stimuli of maybe some beaver tails. So Abby, do we have any questions?
I believe that I covered all the ones that were in the chat or in the comments section. While we wait for new questions to be asked, I could go and get the wolves to get up a little bit and maybe be a little more active.
Sure, that sounds good. So I think distractions are things that we use. I would say they weren't a beaver tail today. They had beaver yesterday. So on the camera, you might be able to see a little bit of the leftover beaver. And when we feed, we obviously have scavengers. So ravens, you probably, if you've been on our cameras, you've probably witnessed ravens. So there's a pair of ravens up on the top of the hill there. I believe they're probably chewing on the leftover beaver. So when we feed, we can't always guarantee that the wolves consume what we want them to consume, because we do have so many scavengers. So this spring, and I use that word lightly or loosely because it's not spring, we have had a fair share of eagles who have been coming back. We do have our resident winter eagles. So those are the eagles that stay all year long and are used to being around winter. And then we have our migratory eagles that come back from warmer climates and come back to, use the lakes and rivers for their main fishing. And I think the migratory eagles have been showing up in the pen quite a bit more because certainly they're questioning where are the lakes, which now still have 20 inches of ice on them and not a lot of open water for eagles to fish. So we're getting more and more eagle presence here every day. Immature balds. We do not have a lot of golden eagles here. I think someone had misidentified the immature bald because the bald eagles do not get their white characteristic head until they're about 4 or 5 years of age. So if you see kind of a mottled big brown eagle looking thing, it's probably an immature bald, although we do have golden eagles that are here, but it's very, very rare that I see them in this enclosure. And turkey vultures have been certainly coming back and showing their presence in the enclosure. So we do distractions, and so those distractions are beaver tails. And so Abby just gave out a beaver tail, and we'll try to move it around and see who was a recipient of those beaver tails. So at the fence, there's Abby and there's Rika. So Rika is about 80 pounds right now. She was 11 months old on Saturday. She's not put on as much weight as we had hoped. Her mom was 115, and I'm going to show you a chart here in a little bit about some of our weights of adult wolves. We'd expect her to be a little bit larger in weight, but we do know that wolves will have a significant amount of calories spent in just staying warm. And so this winter we struggled with her gaining weight because it was such a cold winter and such a long winter. And so we added a little bit more fat to her diet. That was one of the dog sitters that we work with who had also had troubles with his dogs maintaining weight. And so he recommended and he shared with us some beef fat that he had been using with his dogs. And it actually did a tremendous help for Rika after we started adding a higher fat content. We did manage to get a little bit more weight on her, but we expect that will happen in the next probably 2 to 3 weeks, that we're going to start to see her again putting on a couple pounds a week. Typically, the wolves do not reach their adult size until 18 to 24 months. So we're going to see her fill out quite a bit more. She is still a juvenile. She's burying that cache up there in the trees. And we will make sure that we communicate through the wolf logs. We've been trying to get back into them. I know I posted one wolf log here a couple of weeks ago. Thought I was going to do one a week, and time is just something that I seem to be losing track of. So I will try to get that updated. The other question I think some people may have is, are we going to do pups? We are still in the planning stages for doing pups. We do not have any information to share at this point. We are waiting to hear about facility options with whelping. Certainly, we do know that if you can appreciate what we went through with Rika, that all the amount of asking is not going to make nature happen any faster. So we are just not going to stress ourselves. We're going to wait until evidence of whelping has occurred. We do have a couple of source facilities. We can tell you that we are looking at a black color phase. We've had a lot of history with black color phase, especially females, but we are looking at male pups. We are not going to introduce another female to Rika. Our experience has been such that we want to manage one female, and we feel that that's best, and that's what we're going to continue to manage. So helping identify the wolves again, Grayson has a darker precaudal tail gland. I always say if there's a wolf parked right outside the medical pen, sleeping in the cold, looking miserable, it's probably Grayson doting on Rika while she's in the medical pen in the warm, comfortable hay in the sun. We do see still a correlation between Grayson being most responsive to Rika's needs, Axel being most playful with Rika's needs, meaning he'll roughhouse with her, he'll pin her, he'll jaw spar with her, whereas Grayson really observes and watches and is a great uh, skills of a pack leader. Certainly not confirming that he's a pack leader yet right now because it's just still the boys and an immature Rika. She did not have as much evidence of being pair bonded like some of our other females. And I think again, she's young. She's only 11 months old. So even though we saw it with Maya at 9 months, but the difference with Maya is that she had another female who probably pushed her into a little bit more of that competition for status. Abby, I'm going to just let you take over the thing because I can't multitask. I can't push a mouse clicker and talk. So anyway, so I think just Nisa's presence, and Nisa was so testing of Maya. I think that maybe set Maya into more of a pair bonding relationship as a younger pup. Whereas Nisa, boy, am I old and my memory is slipping. Oh, that's a stump. I thought it was Rika too. So Rika, she just got to be a pup. She just got to have fun as a pup because Grayson did all the worrying for her. He bark howled whenever there was crazy things going on. He kept her safe. He watched over her. He cuddled with her. He, did everything she needed to have for protection. She didn't need a pair bond yet. But as soon as we start introducing to more pups, hopefully male pups that will help form that pack, we're likely to see that pair bond. I really do think it's going to be Grayson that she chooses, but it's really her choice, and we'll wait and see what happens there. So any other questions that came through? I know I'm now kind of rambling. I've got about 15 minutes left here. If you have anything that you want me to focus on, I'd be happy to do that.
Yeah, so it looks like we have a few. Any wild wolves around the center lately?
They're always a part of this environment. So the Abby just put together for a cool piece of data that we're going to share. Maybe we'll share that on the May 2nd webinar. Abby put together a piece of footage of our webcam study that occurred in February, as well as the college's study. Jess Edberg's Wolfie research class has finished up their study, and they had a cougar over at the college, as well as a black bear and a lot of deer because they're closer to town. But I think we had something last night. As a matter of fact, I looked at the Explore gallery. So the Explore camera, North camera, last night around 10:19 or so, the wolves are kind of getting all riled up about something. I'm not really sure what it is or what got them kind of excited, but we do notice, and I think it was over the weekend when there was a wolf check, that the staff said that all three of them kept running towards the back of the enclosure. So this time of the year, wild wolves have probably already whelped their pups, meaning that pups are in a den. The mom's probably nursing them, and there's probably individual wolves going out and about trying to catch food, bringing it back to the nursing female. Certainly the pups are not eating meat at this time, but the female who's in the den, 24/7 nursing the pups, she's going to need food. So pack members will be coming and going, taking that food. So I think you're likely to get a little bit more loners. You might also get, wolves that are maybe starting to disperse. I mean, it was a tough winter on wolves. We know from the studies that the USGS did that there were several necropsies this winter with wolves with very poor bone marrow, indicating that they had used up all their fat reserves. So this is one of my favorite Rika faces. I'm going to just stop, and she's trying to get that beaver tail from Grayson, and certainly trying to do everything she can to be cute and to be distracting and to make him want to give it up. But, I think he has his moments where he lets her have some things, but oftentimes, I think lately he's been showing a little bit more of that stern behavior. So she might go try that on Axel. It never wins on Axel. She sometimes gets it away from Grayson, though. So, any other questions?
Yes, let me see. Um, do you still keep the medical pen open for the wolves to go in and out?
Yes, the medical pen is left open, and so I can switch to that quickly. So it's open for a couple of reasons. It has been a lousy spring, wet and damp. And for Rika's sake, we keep it piled high with hay and dried chips to keep her warm because we worried about her weight. We had taken out March 24th. We had a crew here, and we took out um, a lot of the wet hay because hay, when it gets wet, it can be problematic for mold, and that's a real respiratory risk for the wolves. So we want to get it out of there as soon as we can. Well, unfortunately, we took it out, and then we had sub-zero. I mean, cold weather. Even last night, it was 9 degrees here in Ely. It's April 27th, and it was 9 degrees. I believe that was our record low. And it just was frustrating to us. So by leaving the medical pen in, one is that Rika still has that security blanket if things get overwhelming, especially with Axel. Two is that we can keep her warm and dry if she needs to. So she's either been going under the eaves where we put out some chips and keeping them dry, but we just can't put out things in the main enclosure, hay and things, because we had rain. Rain during the day, so everything gets soaking wet, and then it freezes at night. So it's just been a real challenge for us to try to manage this winter condition. And we are certainly in a circumstance where we are ready for spring. We just hope it doesn't go all the way to 80 degrees, go from 9 degrees this morning till May being 80 degrees when wolves have their full winter coat. We need a little bit of transition time there. They don't start shedding usually until late May and into June. That's a typical pattern of shedding for the wolves.
All right, so the next question is it possible for the International Wolf Center to display orphaned wolves?
So our philosophy has always been to reduce the stress of wolves in such a high volume, 30, 40,000, people a year exhibit. To do that, you need to work with wolves during the neonate stage. And research has shown if you don't start working with them, by the time they're 3 weeks of age, 21 days of age, you have a challenging time working through that fear. So wolf pups that are orphaned, to find them, most of the time, if they're orphaned, it'd be, after that 3-week socialization period. So the other challenging thing is not only do we want to have wolves who are socialized so that they're calmer, we have an exhibit that would make it extremely challenging to manage non-socialized wolves. Meaning there are places that do non-socialized wolves, and it is the safest exhibit to manage because when a human walks into a non-socialized wolf exhibit, the wolves are afraid of people and run the other way. So it's very safe to work with rather than wolves who approach the handlers when they come in. But in order to do, medical care, you have to catch them. Well, we can't even, hardly see around the branches with a camera, much less with a dart gun or with something, a net or something to try to catch a wolf to do its basic medical needs if they were non-socialized. So our exhibit has too much vegetation for non-socialized wolves, meaning trying to catch them would be almost impossible in this vegetative cover. Also, the size of it makes it a little bit difficult to catch. So our exhibit is really designed for socialized wolves, and that would mean wolves that we start working with in the neonate stage of 10 to 12 days, and that would preclude us from adopting wolves from the wild and doing what we need to do to manage this facility.
All right, so I'm going to take a break from trying to capture Axel wherever he's trying to catch that beaver tail. Sounds good. Let me find another good question here. What does Rika weigh now?
Okay, so Rika weighs 80 pounds, or she did on her birthday, or kind of around their birth week of our 11th month birthday. So let me just quick switch. Let me stop sharing, and I want to share something else with you. That is, are you? Let me just see if I did this right. I want to share with you a weight chart. So are you seeing a weight chart here? Okay. So this was something put together, and this is something that we're working on. We're working on a study. We're working on several different studies here this year. But this is a study on that we're doing with someone who's comparing growth rates on wolf pups versus dogs. And so he just threw this together. This is actually our previous wolves at 5 years of age, what their weights were at 5 years of age. So we are doing this study looking at how they develop as pups to maturity at 18 to 24 months. And then how does that hold out at 5 years of age? So I just threw this chart up. I thought this was kind of interesting. So Axel at 5 years, 102, that's his weight now. Grayson, 89. He actually is, last time we weighed him was about 92 pounds. Denali, 130. We know that Denali got bigger than that, 140 some in retirement. Grizzer, 125 was his max, 121 at a 5 year age. Bolts was 107. Luna was 111. Aiden, 129. Shadow, 95. Arctic Wolf, that was his 9, and that was actually his highest weight as a 5-year-old. Malik got up to be 92, but at a 5-year-old is 89 and a half. I have no idea why he was weighed at half a pound. Maya was 93 pounds as a 5-year-old female. Lakota was 101. Mac was 93. So when you see all the pictures of that black wolf, Mackenzie, 93 pounds, I think 95 was her max weight. Lucas was 97 and a half. Kiana at 5 years was only 85 pounds. So Rika at 80 pounds at 11 months, we know she's a Northwestern subspecies. So she's not going to rival Aiden and Denali. That's for sure, because they're males. But we do know that she's probably going to get at least Luna's side. I would expect 110 pounds. So 80 at 11 months is a good weight for her, despite the fact that we do know that we probably lost the battle with being such a cold winter. And so I'm going to go back to a new share here and share the camera again. So that is a challenge for us when you have cold winters like that. And she was a late pup, meaning she was born May 23rd. Well, you saw the April birthdays, she's a month later than everybody else. So when I look at, boy, could we have gained something if she was born in that April timeframe? Yes. But, she came, her parents, were wild from way up north in British Columbia, with 60 some latitudes. So it is the later whelping period of those Northwestern subspecies. And, again, I'm not saying that British Columbia is warmer than Ely, but I'm pretty sure we're the cold probe of the lower 48 states on a regular basis. So maybe there's something to be said about British Columbia and exposure to the Western, influence of that jet stream that we just don't get here in the central part of the continent. So anyways, that's just my theory, and I'm sticking to it.
All right, so we have a couple of people asking if there's any updates on how Rika and the boys are bonding.
Yes. So Rika, I mean, I would say we have a great bond between Rika and the boys. Like I said, Grayson, you can always tell if Rika's in the medical pen, because Grayson's camped right outside the door. No matter what the weather, sleet, snow, rain, if she's sleeping indoors, he's sleeping he's sleeping right outside the gate. So I think Grayson has a stronger nurturing bond with Rika, and she sleeps right next to him. I think over the weekend, she cuddles up next to him. She's physically touching him. Axel, on the other hand, not so much. Axel is definitely, this is Axel on top. Axel is definitely more like a pup mate, a competitor, a food competitor. They jaw spar, they wrestle. He'll roll over, she'll bite his tail. The respect isn't quite there with Axel. But I think, that's part of, I've seen that with litter mates, so I think it's not related, that fact that they're different in their subspecies, it's just their different personalities and the bond isn't as strong, but clearly she is part of this pack. There is no doubt. She is a member of this pack, and certainly they watch for her. When she gets weighed, they're right outside the door waiting. Go ahead.
Um, so has Rika had any through the vents visits with dog pups or any of the dogs that she knew when she was little?
Yes, Max was up for the weekend. Max is the dog that helped raise her. She was beside herself trying to see Max. But Abby's dogs, Moose and Ozzy, are here pretty much every day that Abby works. We're working on a little bit of controlled greetings. Axel and Grayson are still a little bit um, um, uh, competitive with Moose and Ozzy. What I looked at this weekend when Max came up just to see Axel and Grayson's response, and there clearly is a distinction between Max, which they accept to be Ron Rika, whereas Ozzy and Moose, they're not as welcoming when they're around Rika.
All right, yeah. So 5 p.m. on Monday, that's when our next Monday webinar. And like Lori said, that's going to be all about the May birthdays. So not just Axel and Grayson, but also about Rika and about Grizzer and any other pups that were born in May.
Yeah, thank you, Abby, for covering for me. I will put that webinar together, and I'll probably do a little bit of a piece of obviously the May birthdays are Shadow Malik, May 8th, in the year 2000, 2004, the Cinco de Mayo Wolves with Grizzer and Maya, and then a week later, May 12th, with Nisa, and then um, Axel and Grayson, as well as Rika, will join that. So I'll try to do another little piece like that. If you have any other things that you want me to include, things that I missed or footage that you really like to see, just send me an email at curate@wolf.org, and I can certainly include that. And so what happened right now is Axel just went into the medical pen. So just because we have it open for Rika doesn't mean that the boys won't go in as well. I don't know what they're up to, but it looks like Rika is Rika's eating her beaver tail. So sometimes when you have competition, you go in, and that's what she's doing right now. She's laying in the hay, chewing on her beaver tail. And we'll also put food in there. Like, so in this cold winter, a lot of said, how do you manage that? Well, we just try to feed her and feed her and feed her. So there's a little stump in there, and we, put in extra chicken, or we put in, a couple of roasts or something like that. So all night long, there's food resources available in that medical pen that she can come in. But, this is a way, Axel and Grayson are not as comfortable about coming into confinement. This is where Rika hung out. I mean, for the first time when we did pups, Rika, we brought the public out to the backyard. So the backyard in the medical pen, that was her safety zone from the public programs. So in her mind, this is a place to be when you have anxiety or you want to, kind of get away from things. So it was a different mentality where Axel and Grayson never even got to go in the medical pen until they were members of the exhibit pack. And then the only time we brought them in is when we were going to drug them or we were going to have some medical event. So different mentality for those guys about confinement than Rika. Rika is probably the most socialized pup we've ever had, just because she was a singleton. She had so much human component that the challenges were trying to get her the wolf piece when she first came in. And those of us who have watched how much time was invested, the staff, to get her comfortable. And for that, we are grateful to Grayson, because without Grayson, if there would have been two Axels in there, Rika would not be as well adjusted as she is today. So I can honestly say that the bond is so strong that Rika is so relaxed and comfortable with who she is, that speaks not only to the wolf care staff who took care of her, but that speaks to Grayson, who made her comfortable as part of that exhibit pack. So with that, I'll just kind of end there before I lose my voice again. Thanks for watching. And those of you who are webinar subscribers, you're going to get the link out on that webinar on Monday. I will try to do that by Friday, so you have it available. And then for everyone watching, if you're a single time viewer or a subscriber, I will send out this archive footage also by Friday, so that you can watch it again or if you happen to, know someone who missed it, they can see it as an archive. So thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.